Welcome to this video. Today I'm going to give you a tour of the different passion fruit vines that I'm growing, also known as passiflora, and give you an idea of how you can grow them in pots, what kind of varieties I'm growing. And as you can see here, I have had some success based on these vines. It may look like a big ball of green, but these are some vines that are about 15 feet long and they're grown in pots. So let's get started and show you a little bit about what I'm growing. To start, I'm going to talk about this Nancy Garrison Passiflora edulis vine. So the Nancy Garrison refers to a type of specific cultivar of passion fruit, of the purple variety specifically. This vine is probably about 15 plus feet long. It may not look like it, and it may look like a green ball, but essentially this was grown inside over the winter. It's about 2 years old. It's got a pretty thick trunk. It's a little bit blended in with this nectarine tree, but as you can see, it's putting on new growth. It's an interesting plant. So Nancy Garrison, as a variety of edulis, is a little bit more cold hardy. Their fruit, we're gonna find out how their fruit are. This is a fruit from it, if you can see in the mess there, or I'm gonna have to do a cut. There it is. So essentially this vine is one of the most vigorous ones I have. Like I said, I got it in 2022. It's grown a lot. It's been a challenge. Like, growing passion fruit has definitely been a learning experience. Specifically just trying to figure out how can I do this, because there's not a lot of videos on the specifics of growing passion fruit in a zone like I am in 7B. That specifically requires that I transition these type of plants in for the winter. And with that just requires a whole lot of thought with, okay, so how am I gonna grow this in a pot? With the challenges with root base, how am I gonna get it enough water? Can I make sure that it flowers? How do I deal with transitions and such? So this vine, it's been pretty successful, and let's jump on to the next one. This vine is a purple possum passiflora edulis plant, so it's a purple passion fruit. It's got two main stems right here. This one's a little harder to see. Its leaves are a little more pale, which probably indicates a nutrient deficiency. This is actually the first vine that I got to get some fully ripe passion fruit. Last year, these vines were pretty well established, the Nancy Garrison and the purple possum. And I got a bunch of fruit to set. The only problem was I got it to set in fall. So what happened is a lot of it ended up ripening inside, and it took a long time, and some of it didn't get fully ripened. But the two that I did get that were totally ripe, they were really pretty fruit. As you can see, it is putting on, there are some places where it's putting on new growth, like right here. That looks a little bit better. So we're gonna see how this one does. Different cultivar. I don't think it has the same cold tolerance. There's a lot of different subtle nuances with how these type of plants have different tastes. Personally, I haven't had enough passion fruit to be able to notice specifically ripe stuff. So the goal is to hopefully get some more fruit like this one up here to set. The Nancy Garrison, it has a few more parts of the vine that are specifically setting fruit, or they're starting to set fruit, like you can see here. Not set fruit, start flowers, that's what I should say. And I'm hoping that this purple possum will follow suit. I've been giving it some fertilizer to try to get it to bloom. Have not seen that. A lot of the blooms often happen on the tertiary or the four extension parts of the vine. So we'll see what happens. That is my first purple possum plant. So I actually have two purple possum plants. This one is in about, I think it's a 30 plus gallon container. It's really, really seriously massive. This plant, I got at the same time as the Nancy Garrison and the other ones. It had a little bit tougher of a time over the winter. It had some issues with transitioning too. I can probably show you some of the parts of the vine that actually dealt with sunburn. That's not something, if you generally read about passion fruit, that you see about sunburn, because these plants are typically specified for full sun. But part of the challenge is that with transitioning these plants, that's not a thing that's necessarily happening in nature. These things are well rooted in the ground. This one, it is doing all right. You can see it's pushing out a lot of new growth here. This one might have some type of nutrient deficiency just based on some of these leaves. I'm not totally sure. It could also be a virus. But generally speaking, the new growth looks pretty good. I'm gonna see how it does this year, because part of the challenge with this is just limited finite space, and this is a massive heavy pot. This one I got a few fruit to set last year, but they didn't ripen just because of positioning inside. The whole challenge is with transition. It's a pretty looking plant, and this is generally kind of the structure. You can see this kind of trellis I have. I have a bunch of these basically in the winter for each plant. I essentially kind of wrap them up around this. And you'll get a better idea of that when looking at the yellow passion fruit I have. So that is my second purple possum plant. So the third plant I have, this is a yellow passion fruit. You can see it's a little bit darker. It's known as Passiflora edulis F. flavicarpa. This one is very much related to the edulis. I mean, all passion fruit are related. You can get a lot of different hybrids if you actually cross-pollinate and plant seeds and such. This one produces yellow passion fruit, supposedly. My understanding is this one was grown from a seed. I got it on Etsy about a year ago, and it's kind of set up in the kind of classic thing I have, bringing it in for the winter. I have not seen any flowers on it. This one's starting to push out some new growth. You can see right here. And hopefully with some of the fertilization I'm doing, I'm trying to avoid nitrogen heavy fertilizers, that I will get some flowers on this. Just a note about this plant, if you are interested in growing it, not all passion fruit can self-pollinate. In Passiflora edulis flavicarpa, specifically, some of the varieties, they're not self-fertile. So that means that you have to have another plant growing at the same time. This one I don't know yet. So it's gonna be an experiment to see if this can self-pollinate and I can get some fruit out of it. But for that first, I need some flowers. So I'll see with it. One other thing to note with this one's a little more cold sensitive that, for example, I've had these outside for probably about a month and a half. This one, if it gets down to 40, a lot of the new growth starts to feel pretty much on struggle street. I've actually had it in this greenhouse right next to it up until more recently. Interestingly, with these other passion fruit, these purple passion fruit, I've had it gotten down to 34 degrees in ground. So they've had some transition and their new growth was not happy, but they did all right. So it's kind of an interesting thing with the test with the Nancy Garrison. So the big one that we looked at, that one, it said that it can tolerate some temperatures down to 28 degrees at times. So if you're in a colder climate, that might be a good option for you. This one, so if you're gonna try to grow yellow passion fruit, you're likely wanna be in a warmer climate where you might have some more possibility of cross-pollination because you're taking the chance with getting flowers and not having them able to be self-fertile. It's an experiment for me. We'll see how it goes. I think this one is also in almost like a 15-gallon pot. That's a big consideration with passion fruit, just trying to make sure that they can get enough water, because that's a huge limiting factor with these type of plants. So with that, we're gonna move to some of the smaller varieties. So right here, we have a different variety of Passiflora. This is an edulis plant. It's described as Panama. I'm not sure if this is red Panama for anyone out there who has some more experience with passion fruit. I got it from Logi's about 2 months ago. It is the type of plant I got in the kind of classic little mini size that they ship. Supposedly the fruit on this plant's a little bit bigger. And I was just interested in seeing how it would grow, seeing what it's like to get a plant from Logi's. I think it's a pretty good deal. It's looking healthy. It's putting on new growth. So that is this is Panama. And next to Panama, we actually have some of the same plants. So these three plants are all cuttings that I did from the yellow Passiflora, so Passiflora edulis flavicarpa. So these three have been super vigorous, growing really well. We see a lot of new growth. It's just kind of an experiment. It's actually pretty straightforward to do cuttings from passion fruit. I think these were kind of put in the ground in little pots earlier this year. They were actually put in some pots kind of like these ones. These ones down here are purple passion fruit. This was actually kind of my first round doing cuttings and having success. So I didn't label them as I should. So I just know they're purple, so they could be either Nancy Garrison or purple possum. So, I mean, some of it's gonna be figuring that out. So I got 3 of those. And looking over here, this is a purple passion fruit. It actually just had a flower. This one has closed. They're pretty easy to self-pollinate, and that was an error I made at first, that if you want to get fruits in pots, you don't have the same long growing season. You have to deal with transition. You have to deal with small root base. So having manual pollination is actually important. The bees will get some of these, but it's important to actually pollinate them. I don't have a video about that, but you can pretty easily find one online. It's not that hard. Some people do it with paintbrushes. You can do it with your fingers. It takes like 5 seconds. So I've seen plants like this get some type of fruit, so I'll see what happens. If it gets one, we'll see. Just looking at it and some of the leaves and the challenges, I think this is a purple possum, just because of the challenges I mentioned with the one in the 30-gallon container. It looks like it's doing all right. Like I said, it has flowers, which is pretty cool for a plant this size. So we're gonna move on to some of the other varieties, if you can believe it. So now we have 2 other varieties and some other cuttings that are in an earlier stage. I just want to give you an idea of kind of part of the process and show you a few of the smaller plants I have. So this is a giant Granadilla plant. I've actually never heard of this Passiflora before starting growing some of these other ones. I was just kind of curious. I'll put a picture up on the screen of what its fruit looks like. It's really big. It's almost like a melon. I got this off Etsy. This is kind of the size you might expect from a lot of online nurseries if you're going to get passion fruit. Etsy is a good option. Logi's is a good option. I also did a video on graciola exotic plants if you're looking for some more exotic ones like this ligularis, which is Granadilla. So this is the sweet passion fruit. This one's pretty hard to find. Giant Granadilla, you can find it online. Edelus is super easy. Edelus flavacarpa, also pretty straightforward. So these are just some small plants. I got both of these this year. I'll see how they do. This is how all the other plants that I have and I showed you started off. To give you a bit of an idea of just kind of some of the cuttings, I still have one plant. This is Nancy Garrison. I put everything in water. That's about 2 months ago. And I left this guy in just because it was a little bit longer of a cutting. Interestingly, I found some different methods for success compared to a lot of other videos, and I probably need to do that. But essentially, I put it in water for an amount of time. Not sure if you're gonna be able to see this. Maybe, maybe not. But there's some signs that there's some really small roots on here. Essentially, what I did with these ones right here, which are gonna need to go back inside, just because I'm concerned about the sun. When I see some roots, I put them in some soil. I have some water in here, if you can see that. And I'm going to leave them in here until I see roots out the bottom. They look stable. They've been like this. They've been planted for maybe 3 weeks. Not sure if I've seen any specific roots at the bottom, but they're looking good. And hopefully they'll turn into some of these kind of other plants, or I can give them away to some other people. So with that, thanks for watching. If you're interested in seeing more about passion fruit, seeing how many fruit I get this year, what is this experiment with growing in pots, feel free to leave a comment. Let me know what you're interested in. I'm starting to make some more videos and want to share more about how you can potentially grow passion fruit. Especially in cold climates. It's a cool plant. There's some definite challenges, but I think there's huge possibilities, as you can see here. So with that, I'll say goodbye. Thanks for watching.